You ever return to a place you thought was yours, only to find it's been taken, fenced off, and turned into something you can't even explain? 3 years after leaving my off-grid cabin, I hiked back into the woods, expecting peace and silence. But what I found was a corporate fortress, barbed wire, security cameras, and an endless field of solar panels where my meadow used to be. Then came the low hum, deep, mechanical, alive. And when I broke inside to find out who built it, I discovered something called Project Antikythera and a drone that already knew my name. This isn't just trespassing, it's invasion. And whoever's behind it isn't finished. Stay till the end, because the photos I found inside that control room, the ones they never meant anyone to see, might explain why they built it on my land. It's funny how a place can pull on you, isn't it? For 3 years, that pull has been this constant, low hum in the back of my mind. A background process running while the rest of my life, the job, the city, all that noise, demanded my immediate attention. It was a quiet ache, a longing for a silence that you can't find anywhere else. 3 years. In the blur of deadlines and obligations, it feels like both an eternity and the blink of an eye. But the cabin, this little box of wood I put together with my own 2 hands, deep in these woods, it never really lets you go. I dreamt about it the other night. I dreamt of the specific scent of the air after a thunderstorm, that mix of ozone, wet pine needles, and damp earth. I woke up with the ghost of that smell in my nose and knew it was time. I couldn't put it off any longer. This place was never just a building. It's my sanctuary. It's the place I came to escape the relentless chaos of the modern world, to actually hear myself think without 1,000 different inputs vying for my attention. It was my own personal experiment in living deliberately, a concept I'd read about and felt a deep need to experience, a place to focus on the essential facts of life. And for me, those essential facts were the primal smell of pine after rain, the solid, satisfying feel of an axe handle in my palms, the simple, perfect taste of coffee brewed over a campfire as the sun comes up. It's my think tank, my creative lab, a safe house for the soul. That might sound a little romanticized, but if you've ever had a place that felt like a true extension of yourself, an external hard drive for your memories and dreams, you know exactly what I mean. It wasn't about running away from the world. It was about running towards a part of myself that got drowned out and suffocated everywhere else. So, after 36 months of city static, I finally carved out the time. The project that had kept me chained to my desk finally wrapped. The family issue that had pulled me across the country had resolved into a new normal. There were no more excuses. I packed up the old truck, the same battered, loyal Ford I used to haul the original building supplies up here. Every dent a memory of a misplaced timber or a narrow squeeze between ancient trees. I started driving before dawn, the city lights shrinking in my rearview mirror like a dying starfield. The first few hours on the highway were just like any other trip, a blur of concrete and exit signs. But then I made the turn, the one onto the county road that slowly, gracefully sheds its asphalt skin, becoming gravel. And then, finally, just a 2-track dirt path swallowed by the waiting forest. I stopped at the last gas station, a dusty little outpost I've been going to for years. But the old pumps were gone, replaced by gleaming new ones with credit card readers. The familiar, grizzled owner who always asked about the cabin was gone too. A new, younger face behind the counter just gave me a vacant look when I asked about him. It was a small thing, but it was the first note in a symphony of wrongness. A reminder that time doesn't just pass, it erases. With every mile deeper into the woods, the anxiety and excitement started wrestling for control. It's a strange, potent cocktail of emotions, returning to a place you've left to the mercy of nature. You're filled with this almost unbearable nostalgia, your mind replaying memories tied to every bend in the road, every old tree standing like a silent sentinel. I remembered the day a friend and I almost lost a load of roofing tin on that sharp curve. I remembered the spot where I saw a black bear and her cubs cross the road one morning. These weren't just landmarks, they were chapters of my life. But under it all, there's this cold knot of dread. What am I going to find? Did the roof hold up against the weight of 3 winters of snow? Did a windstorm finally bring down that one leaning oak tree? And did it punch a hole through a wall? Have squirrels chewed through the wiring? Or worse, have porcupines moved in and destroyed the interior? It's that fundamental tension between what you hope has stayed the same and what you know, deep down, is always changing, always in flux. I never meant to be away this long. A project at work spiraled. a beast that just kept demanding more and more of me. Then a family illness pulled me to the other side of the country for what I thought would be a few months. 1 year bled into 2, and 2 into 3. Life has a way of happening to you while you're busy making other plans. All the while, the cabin sat here waiting, or so I thought. I want to be crystal clear about something. The property isn't legally abandoned. I've diligently paid my property taxes every single year. The deed is in my name, free and clear. This is my land. But in a practical sense, it's been left to its own devices. A little island of human effort in a vast, indifferent sea of wilderness. I had to park the truck about a mile out. Same as always. The old logging road, never great to begin with, gets too rough and washed out from there for anything but a serious off-road vehicle. Pulling on my pack, the air already felt different. Cleaner, thicker. The sounds changed instantly. The drone of tires on pavement was completely gone, replaced by the intricate rustle of leaves in the wind and the indignant chatter of a distant squirrel, probably yelling at me for invading its territory. This was the final approach, the pilgrimage. I walked the familiar trail, my boots sinking into the soft, damp earth. The path was more overgrown than I'd ever seen it. Thorny vines grabbing at my sleeves as if the forest was trying to hold me back. I had to stop and cut a few away with the knife on my belt. As I did, I noticed something odd, a tree stump just off the trail. It was a young maple, about 6 inches in diameter, but it wasn't cut with an axe or a chainsaw. The cut was perfectly flat, almost polished, and cauterized black at the edges, as if it had been severed by an intense beam of heat. It was bizarre, but I dismissed it as a lightning strike, maybe. Just another strange thing the forest does. I saw the old, gnarled oak tree I use as a halfway marker, and felt a genuine smile creep across my face. It was still here, solid, unchanged. Everything felt right again. I was mentally running through my to-do list. Clear the path properly, check the chimney flashing, patch the screen on the front door, air the place out. Normal problems, the kind of honest physical work that grounds you. I was ready to reconnect, to repair my little sanctuary, to put my hands on it and make it whole again. I had no idea that just a few hundred yards ahead, the very meaning of this place had been completely rewritten by someone else. The final stretch of the trail is my favorite part. It crests a small ridge, and through a specific break in the trees, you're supposed to get the first glimpse of the cabin's dark green roofline. It's a view that, for me, has always meant home. A quiet, reassuring signal that the journey is over. The forest was thick and healthy, the air damp and smelling of moss and decay. That rich, loamy smell of a forest ecosystem doing its work. Everything was right. Then I saw it. At first, it didn't even register. Just a flash of man-made color, something totally alien to the palette of the woods, lying half buried in the damp leaf litter. It was a bright orange plastic cap from some kind of bottle. It had a strange, technical-looking logo on it, a stylized gear intertwined with a symbol that looked like an atom. I picked it up. It felt brand new. The plastic was still sharp at the edges, not worn down by the sun or gnawed on by critters. My first thought was, hikers? But who would hike this far in? This isn't a state park. There are no marked public trails anywhere near here. In all the years I've been coming to this property, I have never seen another soul this deep in the woods. Not a single footprint, not a single stray candy wrapper. Nothing. I tried to just dismiss it. Maybe a hunter got seriously, epically lost. I pocketed the cap and kept walking, but that perfect feeling of absolute solitude was already gone. A little bubble of unease had popped in my mind, a sour note in the symphony. As I got closer to the clearing, another strange thing hit me. The sound, or more accurately, the lack of it. The usual constant chorus of insects, the buzzing, the chirping, was gone. The birds, usually a riot of calls and songs, seemed unnervingly quiet. And underneath that new, unnatural silence, there was a hum. A low, persistent, monotone hum. It was barely audible at first. More of a vibration you feel in your teeth and in the bones of your skull than something you hear with your ears. It was the kind of deep, resonant sound a huge power transformer makes, the sound of immense contained energy. It had no place here. It was the sound of industry, of the city I'd just left behind, and it was coming from the direction of my cabin. My pace quickened. The unease was blossoming into genuine alarm. I pushed through a final, thick screen of ferns, my heart starting to pound a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I stepped out to the edge of the clearing, ready to see my cabin, and I froze. The cabin was there. Thank God. It was still standing, a dark shape against the trees. But it was on the wrong side of a fence. A fence, not a rustic split-rail fence that might belong here. This was a brutalist industrial chain-link fence, at least 8 feet tall, the top angled outwards and strung with 3 strands of glistening barbed wire. It was brand new. The galvanized steel gleamed a sterile alien silver against the deep organic greens and browns of the woods. It didn't curve or follow the land's contours. It cut a brutally straight line right through the forest, a scar carved into the landscape. It enclosed the cabin, the meadow, my meadow, everything within a 100-yard radius of where I stood. I just stood there, completely stunned, my mind refusing to process what my eyes were seeing. This wasn't the work of lost hikers or some simple trespasser putting up a deer fence. This was planned, deliberate, professional, an invasion. I know what you might be thinking. This kind of thing is impossible. Utility-scale projects, major construction. They need years of permits, public notices, environmental impact studies, and landowner agreements. You can't just secretly build a major installation on someone else's private land. That's what I thought too. My mind couldn't assemble the pieces into a coherent picture. It felt like finding a fully functional ATM in the middle of the Sahara Desert. It was so profoundly, fundamentally wrong that it broke my sense of reality. The hum was louder now, a tangible pressure in the air, and it was coming from inside the fence, from my land. My initial confusion and disbelief just burned away, like a fog evaporating in a harsh, sudden blaze, and all that was left in its place was a cold, sharp, focused anger. Someone had built a cage around my sanctuary, and I was going to find out who and why. I turned and started walking, my jaw clenched, following the fence line as it snaked away from the cabin and disappeared into the trees. The construction was ruthlessly professional, brutally efficient. Heavy-gauge metal poles were set in deep concrete footings every 10 feet. This cost money, a lot of money. This wasn't a weekend project. This was a corporate-level endeavor. As I rounded a thicket of spruce trees that the fence line cut right through, the hum intensified dramatically, and the tree line broke open. I stopped dead in my tracks. My breath hitched in my throat. My meadow, the beautiful, wild, undulating meadow, where I'd watched deer graze at dawn and listened to coyotes sing at dusk, was gone, annihilated. In its place was a silent, sprawling sea of black glass, rows upon rows upon rows of solar panels, not a few dozen, hundreds, maybe thousands of them. They were mounted on enormous metal racks, all tilted towards the afternoon sun in perfect, silent, geometric ranks. This wasn't just a few panels to power a cabin. This was a full-blown, utility-scale solar farm. It stretched across the entire 2-acre clearing, a high-tech, alien geometry forced onto the gentle curves of the land. It looked like a machine laid over the top of a painting. The rage I felt was a physical thing, a hot pressure behind my eyes. They hadn't just built on my land. They had terraformed it. They had scraped it clean of its wild grasses and flowers, its entire ecosystem, its character, and replaced it with this sterile, silent machine. I followed the fence, my boots now crunching on a new gravel service path that ran along its inner perimeter. They had driven heavy vehicles in here, carving roads where there were only deer trails. The thought of it, the sheer violation, made my stomach clench. Finally, after walking for what felt like half a mile along the perimeter, I found a heavy-duty rolling gate secured with a thick, hardened steel chain and a sophisticated-looking electronic lock with a keypad and an RFID scanner. It was designed to keep people, to keep me out. The sheer, unmitigated audacity of it was staggering. I was a trespasser on my own land. I kept walking, my anger giving way to a grim determination, my eyes scanning every inch of the fence for any sign of weakness, any flaw in their fortress. And then I saw it. About 200 yards past the gate, a large pine limb, a casualty of a past storm, had fallen from a great height. It had crashed directly onto the fence, causing the top of the chain link and the barbed wire strands to sag dramatically. It wasn't a gaping hole, but it might be enough. I stopped and listened. Nothing. Just the woods and that incessant, maddening hum. There was no one around. I tossed my pack over, the sound muffled by the soft ground on the other side. I scrambled up the fallen limb, squeezed myself through the gap, and felt a sharp tear as a barb of wire ripped through the shoulder of my shirt and scratched my skin. I was in. The air inside the compound felt different, colder, more sterile. The hum was now a physical vibration that traveled up from the soles of my boots and resonated in my chest. I walked slowly, cautiously, between the vast rows of panels. They were mounted on heavy-duty galvanized steel frameworks, screwed into massive concrete foundations poured into my land. This was built to last for decades. I ducked under one of the panels and found a small metal data plate riveted to the back of the frame. It was covered in technical jargon: wattage, voltage, efficiency ratings. But there was a manufacturer's name, Helios Gen, a name I didn't recognize, and a long alphanumeric serial number. I took out my phone, my hand shaking slightly with adrenaline, and snapped a clear photo. As I moved deeper into the array, I saw more and more supporting infrastructure. Thick, armored cables, as thick as my arm, snaked from the panel arrays into large, grey metal inverter cabinets, placed at the end of each row. Further on, tucked against the tree line, stood a massive bank of batteries, each the size of a small refrigerator, all linked together. This was a highly sophisticated setup, complete with a massive energy storage system. This wasn't just generating power, it was storing it, managing it. There were no signs of the people who did this. No stray tools, no trash, not even a single footprint in the gravel besides my own. The whole place felt sterile, automated, as if it had been dropped here from orbit and simply switched on. But then I saw something that made a chill go down my spine. Mounted on tall poles at the four corners of the array were sleek, dark, dome-shaped security cameras. They were pointed inwards, surveying the entire facility. Had they seen me climb the fence? Was someone watching a screen somewhere, right now, seeing this tiny, furious figure walking through their silent, humming machine? The feeling of being watched settled over me like a cold shroud. In the geometric heart of the solar array, equidistant from all sides, stood a small, windowless, prefabricated building. It was a simple grey metal box, but a thick bundle of armoured cables snaked from an underground conduit into its side. This had to be the nerve centre, the brain of the entire operation. The hum was loudest here, a deep, resonant thrumming that seemed to sink right into my bones and make the world vibrate. The door was, of course, locked. Heavy-gauge steel, with another electronic keypad lock identical to the one on the main gate. I circled the building, my frustration boiling over into a reckless desperation. I was standing on my own land, locked out of a building that had absolutely no right to be here. I ran my hand along the cold, smooth metal walls. Near the back, low to the ground, I found a ventilation grate. It was a sturdy metal louver, but as I examined it, I saw that one of the bottom corners was slightly loose, bent away from the wall. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was a terrible idea, but it was the only idea I had. I pulled out my multi-tool and flipped open the pliers. I kept glancing up at the nearest security camera, a dark eye on a pole 50 yards away, expecting sirens to blare or lights to flash. But there was only the hum. I wedged the tip of the pliers into the gap and began to pry the corner of the grate away from the wall. The metal groaned in protest. With a sharp cracking sound that seemed deafeningly loud, two of the mounting screws gave way. I pulled harder, bending the grate back until I had created a small, jagged opening just big enough to squeeze through. I pushed my pack through first, then wriggled my way into the opening, scraping my back on the sharp metal. I dropped into the darkness inside. The air was cool and dry, and smelled intensely of hot electronics and ozone. I switched on my phone's flashlight. The beam cut a sharp cone through the pitch-black interior, revealing racks upon racks of servers lining one entire wall. Their thousands of tiny green and blue lights blinked in a silent, complex, and constant conversation. This wasn't just a control room for a power plant. This was a data center, a significant one. My light beam traced across the walls, past coiled cables and power distribution units, and landed on a large whiteboard. It was covered in diagrams, equations, and notes. Most of it was highly technical jargon I didn't understand, terms like isolinear computing and quantum tunneling array. But one section was a hand-drawn map. My blood ran cold. It was a disturbingly accurate satellite image of my property, printed out and laminated, with my property lines perfectly marked in red. The existing solar farm was clearly outlined and labelled in neat, black marker. Project Antikythera, Phase 1, Antikythera, like the ancient, mysterious Greek astronomical computer found in a shipwreck. The name was so specific, so strange, but it was the part next to it that made my stomach drop into a cold, dark pit. A much larger area of the surrounding forest, my trees, my land, was circled in a thick, aggressive red marker. It was labelled Phase 2, Expansion Zone. This wasn't the end of their work. This was just the beginning. The map showed that they were planning to clear-cut my entire 20-acre property. In another corner of the whiteboard, a list of unsettling phrases was written. Substrata geological survey complete. Mycelial. Network mapping, 78% complete. Acoustic. Resonance testing. Schedule Q1 2026. What, in God's name, did mapping the fungus network under my land have to do with a solar-powered data center? My eyes darted around the room and I saw a binder on a small metal desk. I flipped it open. It was full of surveillance photos of my cabin, time-stamped. Photos from last winter, with the roof covered in snow. Photos from the spring before, with the meadow in full bloom. They had been watching this place for years, long before they ever broke ground. As I stood there, reeling from this deeply personal violation, a new sound cut through the steady hum of the servers, a high-pitched, angry whirring like a giant wasp coming from outside, and it was getting closer. I scrambled back to the ventilation grate and peered out. Hovering 50 feet above the center of the array was a drone. It was a large, menacing, matte black quadcopter. Its camera, housed in a gimbal underneath, swiveled, scanned the rows of panels, and then stopped. It pointed directly at the prefabricated building, directly at me. A single bright red light on the camera blinked once, then held steady. It saw me. They knew I was here. This wasn't just passive security. It was active surveillance. In that instant, I wasn't an explorer anymore. I was an intruder who had been detected. A cold wave of primal fear washed over me, but it was immediately followed by a hot flash of pure defiance. Let them watch. I took my phone, aimed its camera at the whiteboard with the map and the chilling expansion plans, and took several clear, steady photos. I took pictures of the server racks, the binder, everything. I was taking evidence. This was a fight now, and I had just found my ammunition. The drone hovered for another 10 seconds that felt like an hour, its unblinking red eye fixed on my position. Then it banked sharply, its rotors biting into the air, and sped away over the treetops, disappearing as quickly as it had arrived. The silence it left behind was somehow even more unnerving than its presence. They knew. The anonymous, faceless entity behind this project knew I was inside their nerve center. I had to get out. Now. I shoved my phone into my pocket, squeezed back through the jagged opening in the grate, and hastily pushed the bent metal screen back into place as best I could. It was a futile gesture, but I did it anyway. I grabbed my pack and ran, not even trying to be quiet anymore. I scrambled back through the gap in the fence, snagging my pants this time, and didn't stop running until I was deep in the woods, my lungs burning and my legs screaming. The forest, which had always been my sanctuary, now felt like enemy territory. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. Every rustle of leaves sounded like another drone. When I finally, agonizingly, reached the truck, I fumbled with the keys, unlocked the doors, and threw myself inside, locking them immediately. I just sat there for a long time, my hands shaking uncontrollably, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I put the keys in the ignition and my hand hovered, a new, chilling paranoia creeping in. I got out of the truck and, feeling like a spy in a cheap movie, frantically began checking my vehicle for a GPS tracker. I ran my hands along the undercarriage, checked inside the wheel wells, and scanned the frame. I found nothing, but the paranoia was now deeply rooted. They were sophisticated enough to build this. They were sophisticated enough to track me. I drove, probably too fast, down the winding dirt roads until I got a single, precious bar of cell signal. I pulled over to the side of the road, the engine ticking as it cooled. The wild adrenaline was fading, being replaced by a cold, hard resolve. They trespassed. They built a massive, unauthorized, clandestine structure. They are watching me with cameras and drones. The logical next step is to call the sheriff, get a lawyer, and have the entire illegal structure removed from my property. But how do you serve papers to a ghost? How do you sue a corporation that might not even exist on paper? One named after an ancient shipwreck. I pulled out my phone and looked at the pictures, my tangible proof. The manufacturer name, Helios Gen, from the solar panel, the server racks, and the whiteboard. Project Antikythera. I typed Project Antikythera into a search engine. The results were exactly what I expected. Thousands of pages about the ancient Greek astronomical device. I tried adding solar, data center, energy. Still nothing. I tried searching for Helios Gen. I found a single entry in a corporate registration database. It was a shell corporation, registered to a PO box in Delaware, with no products, no website, and no personnel listed. A complete digital dead end. I even tried a reverse image search on the strange logo from the orange cap. No hits. This entire situation felt unreal, like something out of a techno-thriller novel. This wasn't some simple property dispute with a neighbor. This was organized, extravagantly well-funded, and deeply obsessively clandestine. My quiet, humble retreat from the world had just become the front line of a very, very strange war. So that's where I am now, at a dusty pull-off on a county road, miles from a place that no longer feels like my own. I came back to my cabin to reconnect with myself and the land, and instead I found it swallowed by a high-tech, illegal installation. A solar-powered data center that's not only trespassing on an industrial scale, but is actively watching me. They've stolen my land, my meadow, and my peace of mind. The name Project Antikythera is a mystery. The technology is advanced and unfamiliar. The security is hostile and pervasive. And now I know that this desecration is just the beginning. The map I found shows they plan to take everything, to erase every tree and every trail and replace it with their humming, sterile machinery. I am not going to let that happen. This place is more than just dirt and trees to me. It's a part of who I am. It's built from my sweat and my dreams. And you don't let someone steal a part of you without a fight. But I'm walking into the dark here. This isn't just about property law anymore. It's about clandestine data centers, bizarre geological surveys, and esoteric project names. I have no idea what I'm truly up against. This is where I need your help. If anyone watching this has seen anything like this before, if you've heard whispers of a project, Antikythera, or a Helios gen, if you're a network engineer or a geologist or even a botanist, and you recognize the tech or the terminology from these photos and my description, mycelial network mapping, please tell me in the comments. Any lead, any scrap of information could be the break I need to begin to unravel this. I'm going to document every step of this fight. They wanted my land for their secret. Now, I'm going to make their secret my mission. I'm going to find out who is behind this, and I'm going to take my land back. This is just the beginning. Subscribe and follow along, because I'm not stopping until I get answers. They started a silent war on my property. I'm about to make it very, very loud.